1. This event happened in the middle of the last half of last year, 2022, and the middle of the first half of this year, 2023. Background story. I, Mike, am a student in the Polytechnic of Port Dickson, Malaysia. I was living in a house with 6 of my classmates in a nearby, somewhat remote town of Pasir Panjang in the same district. We are used to commuting to our college using several roads, with the stretch of about 10 kilometers, which runs in the middle of the forest and oil palm plantation. The road had no highlights. We depend on our high beams when using the road at night because we literally cannot see anything beyond 20 meters at night. I have a bike, which I use to commute from place to place, just like the other 5 of my classmates. One guy had a car, which we often go carpooling on. Now on to the first story, 2022. Me and 5 of my mates went out to eat at night after a hiking trip to the nearby hiking spot on the weekend, leaving the one guy, Chad, at home because he was sleeping. While we were returning home from eating outside, we received a text in the group chat that was made for us. It was from my friend back home, saying something like, "What time will you come home? It felt lonely in this house because Mike is still sleeping in his room." It was weird, because I was in the car with the rest of the housemates, so I replied, "I'm not in the house, bro, I went with them." He went silent after that until we reached home. After reaching home, we opened the door and saw him crouching in a fetal position by the staircase in the living room with a scared expression on his face. We were all about to ask what's wrong, but he told us what happened. He said he saw me sleeping on the floor in my room, feet facing the door with the lights and fan off. He didn't think anything about it at first until he got my message in the group chat. He realized that it was not me that he saw and his stomach dropped upon reading my message. He even went to check my room again to make sure somebody was there, but nobody was. We were joking around about him, and I even knocked on my room door to let myself know that I'm going in. We didn't take him too seriously, just to calm his nerves down. We don't have trouble sleeping that night, but I'm sure he didn't get any sleep. A few weeks go on, and one day when I was downstairs with one of my housemates doing assignments, while waiting for my other housemates to arrive from eating outside, I noticed someone walking barefoot outside the gate. The gate was open, so I had to look and analyze the person walking. It made a footstep sound, but something felt off, so I went over to have a look. I opened my door and walked to the gate to see, but the man was gone. I was curious, so I walked in the same direction as I saw it walking and looked along each road at the 4-way intersection in our neighborhood. The person was gone. It was really quick, judging from the time it took me to reach outside the gate, 10 seconds. I went back inside to tell my housemate who's doing assessments about what just happened. Fast forward a few weeks. I was riding my motorcycle alone through the dark road after eating outside with my mates. This time I'm the only one not in the car with them. Midway there was an intersection which only lit up part of the road, and I was going to switch lanes, so I looked at my side mirror to make sure there were no cars behind me so I can safely merge. But I noticed the reflection of a person in white cloth on my back seat, waving in the wind. I was wearing all black at that time. I didn't think of it too much because I'm more concerned about my safety on the dark road. As I went deeper into the road, the reflection became darker and darker due to the absence of light in the area. So I kept riding home without much thought put into it. But as I was arriving home, I parked my bike outside the gate and looked at my bike from afar. I didn't want to open the gate because I didn't want anything that followed me to come inside with me. So I waited for my friends to arrive before making a decision. I told her to go away and don't follow me. But I don't know if it worked. I was having cold sweats and chills at that time. As my friends arrived, Chad asked me what's wrong. I told him everything that happened, like the story above. He told me to calm down and advised me to tell her to go away and don't bother us. I did just that and went inside like normal. No nightmares nor disturbances that night, so I believe it was all fine. Ever since that day, I'm getting more and more paranoid when riding my bike at night. I noticed this particular smell when riding. It smells like flowers, but it was unpleasantly fragrant. Feels like you're smelling someone with perfume up close. But the smell doesn't come every time I went through that road, though. Another day, I went through another road that led to our home. It's been a couple of weeks since I last smelled the fragrant smell. Until that moment. I felt like something was wrong, and I said out loud in my full-faced helmet, "Do not follow me." However, at that moment, I didn't see anything behind me in my side mirror. It was getting annoying at that point. I don't even feel scared of it nor threatened. It just feels like you're being played. We then went on semester break, which I attended camp for a month and returned back to the same house for the next semester. We didn't have any encounters for a good couple of months from the beginning of the semester, until one day I was sleeping downstairs in the living room and was woken up by a voice that seemed to mimic the voice of Chad. Wake up, Mike, Mike." I thought something bad had happened, so opened my eyes, but to my vision, the whole living room is dark, with the exception of our porch light shining through. I did see someone tall standing over me, but I thought it was Chad who woke me up, so I asked him, "What's wrong?" But I didn't get a reply. I then looked at the thing standing over me to see if it's really him. It was really tall and dark, but I couldn't see a face since it was dark, and I just woke up from sleep. I then realized something is off by the usual length of delay in getting a response. So I told it, "Don't fucking bother me, I'm sleeping." Then rolled to my right and closed my eyes. I then heard footsteps at the staircase. It was not like someone going back up to the room, but instead the footsteps sounded like it was going up and down the stairs multiple times. I got annoyed by this and looked at the staircase with the intention to yell at whoever was playing at the staircase. But there was nobody there. The sound of the footsteps were still there and continued for about 5 minutes. Then my friend's alarm watch sounded. Then I knew what time it was. The watch showed 5 a.m., so this incident happened at after 4 a.m. I told my housemates everything in the morning. Until today, I do not know what entities those things were that hitched a ride behind me. The smell and the tall figure calling my name and waking me up. All I knew was I saw, heard, and smelled and felt them. Might need to taste them to have the complete experience of 5 senses. Feel free to speculate what the entity could be that I encountered, or how it might be related or not. 2. I have been debating on sharing this story with anyone outside of my small circle of people that were there, but I want to share my experience in hopes that it saves someone's life, or to give understanding of what someone else has experienced. Late fall 2010, in northern Canada, I went deep into the wilderness with my father and my eldest brother to hunt for moose. We left in the early morning, just before sunrise, trying to cover as much distance as possible before nightfall. We traveled winding rivers and had to repeatedly portage over rapids all day. We decided to set up camp just over halfway to our destination. My father figured that we'd make the rest of the journey tomorrow. Well, when everyone bedded down for the night, I decided to go grab some firewood and relieve myself down by the bank of the river, just out of reach of the light from the campfire. Out from the tree line, about 15 yards away, I could hear rustling in the bushes. I watched the area where I heard the noise and focused on that spot. I felt kind of fuzzy, dizzy, lightheaded, and I could smell this putrid stink like old milk or rotten food. Then I saw the trees start to morph and move ever so slightly, and begin to take the shape of a head and slight facial features. My eyes began to adjust to the darkness and along the tree line. I could hear this voice coming from there. I recognized it. The voice sounded like one of my relatives who had recently passed. The face took the shape of my relative. "Hello," they said. "I've missed you. Come see me." I smiled and stepped forward a bit, but stopped to analyze the situation. My relative's face stopped smiling and became emotionless. The skin began to turn pale and peel away. Chunks of flesh fell from their cheeks, began to fall away, and I feel shock and fear overwhelm my body. I couldn't make sense of it at all, so I started to back away and make my way to camp. I didn't realize at the time that I had been walking towards the voice, and I was further away from the firelight. The voice became angry and began shouting at me to come here. So I turned to run away, but as I looked back one more time, I saw the most disgusting thing I have ever seen. It was rotting flesh on gnawed bone, caved-in eyes, and a hollow chest cavity. This humanoid creature was tall and super thin. I ran as fast as I could, trying to yell for help, but the fear had made my voice quiet and raspy. I ran along the riverbank, and I could hear the heavy breaths and the stomping feet from this thing right behind me. I made it onto the top of the riverbank, but it grabbed a hold of my legs as I jumped up. I gripped and tore the grass, trying to lift myself and yelled as loud as I could, when finally my voice came back and I yelled, "Someone has my leg!" My brother woke up and ran over to where I was. Then he pulled me up and took me over to the fire. I was terrified, trying to explain what I saw and that it looked like my relative, but not. I was trying to convince him that I wasn't seeing things, but my brother nodded his head and said, "I saw it too, I know." That solidified it. He acknowledged that it was real. We stayed up all night after that, rifles loaded and close by. We packed up when the sun was coming up and went back home. We haven't shared that story with anyone out of fear of being labeled as crazy or liars. I've had nightmares and couldn't sleep for months afterwards. I would see things, dark figures looking into my window, or hear whispers when I was walking home at night. Eventually, I was seeing this dark figure daily. I went to medicine men, shaman for help, but I've learned that the ceremonies only relieve it temporarily. Friends have given me everything from protection pouches to certain crystals. I found out that there's a strong possibility I encountered a Wendigo. I learned that if you encounter one and survive, it attaches itself to you like a parasite. I learned that it could only do this if it touches you, which it did. Ever since that night, I have been on edge when I enter any forest or wooded area, which sucks because I loved being outdoors and hunting in nature. Now I always feel like I need to keep my back against something when I'm out in the wild. Anyways, make your own conclusions about this. I've paid a price for being an ignorant child to the stories of old. They are real. I can attest to that. Stay safe, everyone. 3. Just to clarify, I don't have schizophrenia, psychosis, or any type of hallucination disorder. When I was 13, me and my family lived in a small apartment. The first thing that happened was when my little sister, who's 5, was playing in my room. My mom came in my room and asked, "Who are you playing with?" because she was giving food to an imaginary friend. My sister said the guy. My mom was a bit unsettled, and then asked what the guy looked like, and my sister said he was black with a mask and no eyes and stands in the corner. The corner she pointed to was the only place in my room that had creaky floorboards. After that, random things would happen. I would hear my bed springs going down as if someone sat down on it, or things that I would put down and walk away from for a couple of minutes would disappear for hours and show up in places where I'd swear I didn't leave them. I also woke up at 3 a.m. every night for almost a week. My mom once heard my bed springs go down and got freaked out by it. A couple of months later, I heard that you can invite spirits to sit in chairs, and me, being the dumb teen I was, did exactly that. I did this while my family was away on a camping trip for 2 days. I invited any spirits to sit in a chair. Nothing happened when I did that, and me, being a non-believer, thought it was just a bunch of crap. I decided to make dinner for myself. While I was sitting and eating, I felt this extremely cold gust of air go past me 2 times in a row. And this was not an air conditioner or a fan because everything was off. I was unsettled after that. 2 days later, I was sitting on my bed playing video games with my siblings. While I was waiting for the game to load, I was watching the TV in the reflection of the microwave. My room was right outside the kitchen, so I can see the microwave, and when the TV's on, it reflects onto the microwave. While I'm watching it, a clear silhouette of a woman walked in front of the TV 2 times in a row. I thought it was my mom, but I remembered that she went to the store. The next day in the evening, I was sitting in my bed watching YouTube, and I heard 3 loud, clear knocks coming from within my room. I thought it was a YouTube video I was watching, but I rewinded it and the knocks weren't in the video. At this point I was scared, since I heard that 3 knocks means it's a demon mocking the Holy Trinity. A couple of weeks later, I forgot about everything that happened. I was heading to my room to go to sleep. When I stepped into my room, I felt sick and could barely breathe. I immediately walked out of my room and felt better. I decided to sleep on the couch. This continued for the next 5 days. On the 6th day, I was sick of this, and I Googled how to get rid of spirits. I read that you have to demand them to leave. I found my mom's holy oil and went around the department, demanding any spirits to leave and putting the holy oil onto the door frames. I felt much lighter after I did this. Nothing happened after that, and we moved out a year later. 4. This isn't something I've thought about in quite some time, as it never occurred to me to be anything more than my younger self's active imagination. However, my recent interest in the paranormal, I'll call myself a curious skeptic, has made me rethink some things I witnessed when I was young. Some background. One side of the house I grew up in, disregarding the addition, is upwards of 200 years old. It has low ceilings, creaky stairs, and a horrifying basement among many other odd things. My parents' bedroom is on this side of the house and was formerly a dining room. When I was young, probably until I was 6 or 7, I'd sleep in my parents' bed from time to time. Typical for a kid who often couldn't sleep. And each time I can recall seeing figures in their very dark room, 2 of which I can remember vividly. The first was a tall figure, male with a large hat. He'd stand in the doorway to the dining room and lean against the threshold, holding what I believed to be a musket or a long firearm. Which was odd because for my age I don't think I could identify what a firearm looked like. But I can vividly remember knowing what he was holding. He would move, lifting his arm to adjust his hat or shift his weapon, but would never walk. The second figure was even taller, and I remember being unable to identify if it was male or female. It would stand in the doorway to the bathroom on the right side of the bed, often wave an arm and then stroll from the doorway, to pace back and forth along the foot of the bed. Sometimes it would stop and lean over the bed to look at me before pacing again. Both figures looked like shadows or silhouettes in the pitch black. Neither would disappear, no matter how many times I closed my eyes or tried to think them away. I never asked if my parents could see them, as I never wanted to wake them. What makes me curious is that I know I saw both figures, among others, on several occasions, not just in one night, and always in the same spots performing similar actions. The more I've learned about spirits within the last year or so, I've been interested. The more these occurrences seem strange to me and more than a child's imagination, but I can't be sure. I have to be skeptical, as I haven't seen anything similar in a long time. My parents have mentioned strange happenings with the TV acting funny on that side of the house, remotes and cameras not holding their charge, and hearing strange noises. But I think all these things can be attributed to living in an old house. So, I'm curious. Does anyone think what I saw could be more than a child who was afraid of the dark? 5. Hi there. I've had many paranormal experiences in my life, but nothing that felt negative or oppressive. until the last year or so. It's something that has been bothering me for a while now, but I ignored it until recently it became active to my parents as well. I want to know if anyone has any knowledge or similar experiences. For context, I always watched my parents' dog when they go out of town. He's an old dog, and I wanted him to be as comfortable as possible, so I would just stay at their house for the week. It started about a year ago, the first time I stayed at their house since I moved back to the area. The first night I was there, I slept upstairs in my old childhood room. I had a nightmare, eerily realistic feeling, of 3 loud knocks on the front door. In the dream, I leapt out of bed, ran down the stairs in a panic, and right before I reached the door, I woke up. This nightmare repeated for 3 nights. Each night I was there, I would see shadows moving in the corner of my eye and the upstairs hallway corner where my parents' room was, had heavy, oppressive energy. I closed all the bedroom doors, hoping to ease the tension. But it prevailed. On the 4th night, I slept downstairs on the couch. I wanted to be closer to the front door. As in my nightmare, I would run downstairs in a panic, and then, as soon as I actually woke up, I would feel compelled to run downstairs immediately to check the lock. This is when the noises started upstairs. Loud stomping, items being dropped, doors slamming. I kept seeing a shadow person in the corner of my eye on the landing of the stairs. I considered I was paranoid. My childhood wasn't fantastic by any means, and I was never comfortable there since, but the dog really clarified things for me. He would look up towards the ceiling every time there was a bang. There were several times he would bark at me like crazy and run over to bite at his leash to leave. This was very unlike him. He rarely barked, even when someone was over. It wasn't that he needed to go outside for the bathroom, because he would bite the leash we used for long walks or drives, not the long leash for just near the house. There was an overwhelming feeling to get out almost all the time. It got to the point I could barely sleep. I spent more time taking the dog for drives with me than I did at the house. I couldn't leave him there alone because it didn't feel safe. When we came home, he would pull against the leash to not go back inside. My dad would message me at random points, asking me to check upstairs because the motion-activated cameras kept going off. There was never anything actually there. I watched the dog twice after that, spaced out several months. I didn't have nightmares again, but I slept downstairs and refused to go up. Everything was still the same. The noises, the shadows, the energy, my dog's behavior. I explained it to my parents each time. My mom, a believer, didn't discredit my experiences, but expressed she never experienced it herself. My dad is a huge skeptic, so said I was crazy. The dog passed away a few months ago. We were all devastated and extremely emotional. Even my dad, who has always been a closed-off, apathetic person. A few weeks ago, my dad called me around midnight to ask where I was and what I wanted. Confused, I told him I was at my house in bed and I didn't want anything. He said he very clearly heard me call his name from downstairs. He said I yelled out "Daddy," which I have not called him since I was incredibly young. I sent him a picture to prove I was at my house, because he would not believe me. Last week, my mom told me my dad was sleeping in bed while she was still awake. He woke up startled, turned toward the doorway, and said, "It's like 12 feet tall and hunched over." He went back to sleep immediately. The next morning, he told us he saw a shadow figure walking from my old bedroom towards his room. It was so tall, it had to hunch as it walked. The man who never believed in any of this and made fun of me for over a year now firmly says the house is haunted. I share this experience in hope someone can provide any knowledge whatsoever, whether that be what this could possibly be or how to protect myself and my family. If you actually listen to all of this, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing your opinion. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 337. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you'd like to get the videos a little bit early, you can support me for as little or as much as you like through Patreon, which is linked in the description. You can also purchase Hellfreezer merchandise from my Teespring store, also linked in the description. If you'd like to support on a one-time basis, you can make donations during videos or streams, and while this is not necessary, it is very much appreciated. Right, I don't think there's any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: do you like your pie crust soft, hard, or burnt? And this comes from one of my moderators, Shigar. Personally speaking, I like my pie crust to be crumbly, almost like savory shortbread, that kind of crumbly, and delicious, rich with butter. As part of the experience. I'll eat it if it's burnt, because I don't like to waste food, but I like it to be, almost like melting in your mouth. That's how I like it. Please do let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm gonna head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.